Hi everyone, you are Reddit expose there, enjoy watching.
I was 3 years into driving nights on the south side when Nora climbed into the back seat of my Corolla and said my name like a question she already knew the answer to. Evan. I'd recognized that Vosani wore salt on a glass rim, somewhere at the lake, our first apartment with the broken radiator. But I still checked the app like a coward, pretending I needed the destination. O'Hare. Terminal 3. Her suitcase was wedged at a diagonal, a tag flapping with a barcode and a strip of pink tape the color of bubble gum we used to buy at the corner store. It's been a minute, she said. Rain stitched the windshield in diagonal threads. Yeah. I flicked the blinker and pulled into traffic on Halsted. Buckled. She clicked the belt, then leaned back. In the rear view I caught her eyes, still the same green that made me write dumb poems in college. Only now, they had that city glaze, like windows that learned not to show what's inside. We met in Evanston when my world fit inside 3 blocks and to coffee shops. She painted on found cardboard and made sandwiches in a deli that named things after presidents. I studied city planning because I thought maths were just stories pretending to be math. She left first an artist residency in Pilsen, a studio with pipes so loud we joked they were ghosts in therapy. I followed a year later with a job at a non-profit converting vacant lots into gardens that kept getting mowed down by the city because our permits were never the right shade of official. The breakup wasn't a hurricane. It was snowfall. Quiet, incremental, 1 white inch at a time, until the door wouldn't open. We kept choosing work over dinner, sleep over touch, the next hustle over the present tense. The night we called it, the radiator finally clanged on and filled the room with the kind of heat you can't do anything with. She cried. I didn't, which is a detail I still hate about myself. Now she was in my backseat in a city that knew us both too well. You still painting? I asked. Mostly to make the air less thick. Designing, she said. Packages, websites, whatever pays on time. She said it like a joke you learn to say so it won't sound like defeat. And you, City Savior Incorporated? I laughed. Budget cuts. I save people from surge pricing now. We passed the liquor store where we bought champagne. After our first art fair, the laundromat where we once fell asleep on the warm dryers during a blizzard, the mural she helped design now tagged over, then painted over, then replaced with an ad for washable rugs. I'm moving, she said, like tossing a coin into my lap to see if it'd flinch. Los Angeles, a firm in Echo Park. Sun, traffic, kombucha on tap, choose your stereotype. When? I asked. Tonight. She tapped the suitcase. Red eye. Start Monday. I gave away the plans. That last part hit harder than it should have. She loved those monsteras like kids she could water. I imagined them redistributed in stranger windows, leaves catching light she would never see. Congratulations, I said, because Chicago taught me to say the right thing even when it tasted like pennies. She leaned forward. Can we take Lakeshore instead of the expressway? I want to see the water. Sure, it would add 10 minutes and cost me 2 requests. But some debts aren't in money. We curved east. The lake had that slate color you can't put in a paint set, like the sky forgot itself. Joggers in neon. A cyclist hunched like a question mark. A couple under one umbrella doing that awkward ballet of trying not to get both drenched. Do you remember, she said, the time we ran from a store and ducked into that theater, watched half a movie in wet socks, and the usher gave us trash bags to sit on? I said, yeah. I remembered the way her damp hair smelled like lavender and spite. Silence settled, but it wasn't hostile. It was an old room we both knew how to stand in. Why didn't we make it? She asked, so plain I almost missed the heartbreak in it. Because we mistook momentum for meaning. Because we were 2 people trying to be cities bigger, busier, brighter. Because wanting was easier than tending. The tidy reasons lined up like fresh nails, ready to pin butterflies. I thought the next version of me would be easier to love, I said. I kept chasing him. By the time I turned around, the version of you I needed had turned into someone I didn't know how to talk to. She breathed out, a small sound like an apology that didn't ask for anything back. I wanted you to magically understand what I never said out loud. We hit a red light. The city paused, held its breath. I turned and looked at her fully. She was beautiful in that tired way women get when they've survived themselves. I'm sorry, I said, 2 words we used like coupons back then, never at the right store. Now they felt like exact change. Me too, she said. She smiled without showing teeth. You grew a beard, she added, like it was evidence in case we weren't trying anymore. Midwestern witness protection. She laughed for real, and the sound shook something loose inside me. My phone pinged 3 new ride requests I couldn't take. The light changed. We slid forward. Can we stop at the point? She asked. Just 5 minutes. I pulled off near Promontory, parked illegally like a teenager, and we walked out to the rocks. The rain had thinned to a mist that made everything honest. Downtown was a barcode across the water. She stood with her hands in her coat pockets, chin up. I wanted to tell her she looked like every photograph that made me wish I believed in fate. Chicago taught me to leave, she said quietly. And you taught me to look back. I'm glad you're going, I said. You should see what your life does in different light. She nudged my shoulder with hers, the way she used to when words were a luxury. And you, going to plan the city into being kinder, in trying, I said. On good nights, drunk strangers tip me and tell me their secrets. On bad nights, I remind myself that a steering wheel is still a circle. It brings you back around. We walked back to the car. I drove her the rest of the way in a pocket of silence that felt like a blanket, not a wall. At the terminal, I popped the trunk. She lifted her suitcase and set it down gently, like placing a baby into a bassinet you hope is sturdy. So, she said, one hand on the handle, the other tucking hair behind her ear. This is the part where one of us says something cinematic and the other ruins it with a hug. Let's not be cinematic, I said. Let's be accurate. She laughed, then stuck out her hand like we were closing a deal. I took it. Her palm was warm. For a second, the airport nose-dimmed. The sliding doors paused, and every road we could have taken clicked through my mind like a Viewmaster. Text me when you land, I heard myself say. Or don't. Either way, be safe. 5 stars, she said. No tip. It was our old line. The one we used when we paid each other in stupid favors, coffee runs, stretching canvases, wanting to meet the meter. We both smiled. She turned, joined the stream of people who looked the same until you love one of them, and didn't look back. I sat there too long. A security guard gestured. I pulled away, merged into the flow, let the city reabsorb me. That night, after 3 more rides and a basket of chicken from a place that never changes its grease, I parked by the lake again. The rain had stopped. The water held the city without dropping a pixel. I thought about the gardens we tried to keep alive and the fact that most plants die not from lack of water, but from too much of it at once. I thought about Norrout in a tube of metal above Nebraska, the map on a tiny screen showing a line we draw to make sense of flight. I drove home and opened the Notes app where I keep sentences I don't know what to do with. I typed, some loves are houses you don't live in anymore, but you still drive by to make sure the porch light works. Then I put my phone face down and listened to the radiator knock like a neighbor. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. No text, just a photo, a wing above a field of clouds, the edge of a city glowing like embers, a thumb in the corner because she never cared about perfect. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. In the morning, I signed up to volunteer mapping curb cuts for wheelchairs on the west side. It felt small and correct. On the way, I stopped at the deli that names things after presidents and ordered the one we used to laugh about because it was too tall to eat like a human. The guy behind the counter had gray in his beard. You been around, he said, ringing me up. I left and came back. I said, you know how it is. He nodded. Everybody does. On the train, I took a bite and nearly choked because some memories are booby-trapped on purpose. I laughed alone, wiped mustard off my sleeve, and let the city roll by. Brick, mural, cloud. A woman slept with her head against the window. A kid read a comic and moved his lips. Somewhere above, another city. Nora was landing. Somewhere below, a garden was growing in a lot that used to be a car. I'm not sure if this is a happy ending or just an honest one. I know the app will keep sending me riders who will tell me about their divorces and promotions and dogs. I know the radiator will keep lying about spring. I know I will keep driving, which is another way of staying. 5 stars. No tip. I'm good with that. The curb cut project sounded small on paper. Measure the slope where sidewalk drops to street. Photograph the lip if it's jagged. Tag the GPS point. Move on. In practice was hours of kneeling on grit, listening to a bubble level eye to me, while buses sighed. At the curb band a woman pushed a double stroller past a utility cap jutting like a bad tooth. A guy named Mr. Alvarez met me at the first corner. He rolled up in a power chair that hummed like an old fridge and tapped the concrete with a cane he didn't need but liked to use for emphasis. City says this is compliant, he said. chin toward a ramp that ended in a pothole deep enough to drown a goldfish. Compliant with what gravity? I laughed, then stopped because he didn't. He taught me to look with his eyes, not mine. Not at the pretty slope, but at the quarter-inch lip that would snag a caster. Not at the fresh white paint, but at the heaved seam where winter shoved concrete up like a stubborn memory. We worked a block, then two. He told me about his granddaughter, who could wheelie in her chair, and his old job repairing typewriters, how he still missed the sound of letters landing on paper like rain starting on a roof. Around noon we ducked into a taqueria with a mural of monarch butterflies migrating over the skyline. My knees were dusted gray. He ordered langue and told me how intersections are where you find out if a city means what it says. A good corner, he said, is a promise kept. On the train home I scrolled without thinking and caught myself on a photo palm trees against a sherbet sky, a strip mall marquee glowing Panadera El Sol. No caption. Nora's thumb in the frame, as usual. An hour later. Landed. Smells like jasmine and brake dust. I typed 3 responses, deleted them, then sent. Welcome West. Hydrate. Plants and people both. A dot blinked, then paused, then nothing. It felt right. We were learning to leave space, without leaving scars. At night I took the car out again because habits are just prayers with rubber on them. My first pickup was a nurse from the late shift at County. She slept sitting up, her head bobbing in little crescents. At a light I eased the heat toward her side, and killed the radio. 5 stars. No tip. A text after. Thanks for the quiet. I pinned it like a medal. A kid with a guitar got in next 12 frets and too much hope. He was headed to an open mic in Uptown, fingers drumming the case like a heartbeat he couldn't slow. I didn't give advice because if learned advice is the tax you pay on someone else's dream. At the curb he turned back. You ever get over somebody? He asked. No. I said, then added, but it changes shape. You stop tripping over it as much. He nodded like I gave him a quart had been missing. 5 stars, he said. Can't tip in the app until Friday. Tay-day. Play the sad one last, I told him. People clap harder for that. On Sundays I started going back to the lots I used to fight for, the ones the city mow, and we were planted, and winter chewed again. The one on 16th had chain link now and a sign with a phone number, but along the fence a row of sunflowers had grown on their own, heads bent like they were listening to something beneath the dirt. I stood there a long time, palms on the mesh, the metal imprinting my skin with diamonds I didn't mind keeping for an hour. Leela from the old non-profit found me, one afternoon, her hair new and her stare the same. I figured you'd haunt this place, she said. She was piloting a group of teenagers with rollers and trays, turning a battered wall into a crosswalk mural. She handed me a brush without ceremony. They're paying you yet? I asked. Same as always, she said. In snacks and indignation. We painted yellow rectangles that stretched into perspective, like a road you could walk safely if you believed the illusion hard enough. A girl with chipped blue nail polish told me her favorite color was gas station dawn. I wrote that down in my notes app and felt my chest thumb clench by degrees. I bought a Monstera cutting at a plant swap, mostly out of spite against my own tendency to kill green things with kindness. I named it Della and set a reminder on my phone. Water on Tuesdays, not when I'm sad. The first week I hovered, the second week I forgot, the third week a new leaf unfurled like a quiet decision. Nights got easier, not simple, but less jagged. I learned the back way to the airport that skipped one choke point and hit a stretch of row where the lights always fell green if you caught the first one right. I added those lights to a list of small generosities. Bus drivers who lean their rigs for walkers, baristas who slide the extra muffin at close, men who pick up their own trash at the ballpark, curb cuts that slope like kindness. One dawn, a real one, not the gas station kind. I parked by Montrose Harbor and watched the city invent itself again. Gulls heckled the water. A guy in a suit threw a tennis ball for a dog wearing a bandana that said crew. I opened my notebook and wrote, maybe closure isn't a door, it's a window you learn to crack for air. It sounded like me and not like me, which is how I know in getting closer. Around 9 my phone buzzed. Nora, at last, a photo of a tiny office with a concrete floor and a fern that looked doomed. A dented metal desk, a sketch of a logo pinned with blue tape. They gave me a key, she wrote, and a plant I will definitely murder. Echo Park smells like tortillas and wet eucalyptus. You were right about different light. It's weird. It's good. I sent her a link to a YouTube video titled How Not to Overwater, Fern and Nothing Else. She sent a laughing emoji and a sticker of a cartoon raccoon for reasons were probably raccoon reasons. I didn't overinterpret it. I took a picture of Dole's new leaf and didn't send it. In my building, the neighbor across the hall, Mina, who fixes bikes in the living room and sets a bowl of water out for strays, started leaving her door open when she was painting. One evening she knocked on my holding a bag of screws and a look that said, "Don't make this weird. You got a drill?" she asked. "And any opinions on shelves not falling?" I had both. We set the bracket level with a copy of Beloved because the bubble had a mind of its own. She told me about the time she biked to Peoria for no good reason except gravity works sideways sometimes. I told her about the gardens, the curb cuts, the way people fall into your back seat and either tell you their whole life or guard their silence like a dog with a bone. When the shelf held, she whooped, a clean sound that did nothing to me except make something in the room loosen its grip. She handed me a Coke from the fridge and we stood at the window watching a thunderhead chew up the western sky. "You ever miss who you used to be?" she asked. "Every day," I said, "but less like a wound, more like a bruise." "Fair," she said, and clinked her can to mine. I didn't look for signs, which is something I learned the hard way, but they showed up anyway. Mr. Alvarez texting me a photo of his granddaughter's first wheelie. Leela mural getting tagged then repaired by the kids themselves. A nurse leaving an envelope with a handwritten thank you and a Starbucks card that I taped to the wall like art. The radiator clanged and then stopped, like it had finally figured out warmer weather wasn't a rumor. At the end of a long Friday, I got a ping from the airport. A man in a tangle of suit carrier and exhaustion slumped in the back. "Home?" I asked. "Home, Maish," he said. "New job, new city, same luggage." We took the back way. He stared out the window like the glass owed him answers. At a light he cleared his throat. "You from here?" "Long enough," I said. "What do people do when they don't know who they are here yet?" I thought of maps and how I used to believe they were math until I learned they were stories pretending to be facts. I thought of Nora's fern and Dole's leaf and Mr. Alvarez's definition of a good corner. "Take a block," I said. "Make one promise to it. Keep it. Then pick another." He nodded like maybe that would keep him from floating off the edges. When I dropped him, he tipped me in cash and said, "5 stars, like it was a benediction. I slid the bill into the glove box where I keep toll money and apologies that arrived too late. That night I didn't drive. I walked. The city does a different kind of talking when your feet are the engine. At the point, a wedding party took pictures in a gust that wanted to eat the veil. A kid flew a kite so hard it buzzed. Someone grilled meat that turned the evening into a memory before it was even done. I called my mother to hear how the porch light was behaving. We talked about the weather in that Midwestern way that's actually about love. On the way home I passed the deli. The guy with gray in his beard looked up when the bell jingled. "Dak so soon?" he asked. "Trying to close the loop," I said. He nodded like that meant something universal. Maybe it did. He slid me a cookie I didn't ask for. "On the house," he said. "You look like you could use sugar." On my stoop, I ate the cookie that tasted like childhood and bad decisions forgiven. The sky over the lake went the specific blue. It only goes for 3 minutes a day. My phone buzzed once. It was a photo from Nora. A tiny cardboard sign shed lettered, taped to the wall over her desk. "Some loves are houses you don't live in anymore," it read, in her loop hand, "but you still drive by to make sure the porch light works." No caption, no ask, just the sign. I laughed out loud at us, at the echo, at the shameless way life plagiarizes itself when it needs to. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I finished the cookie and watched my block's porch lights wink on. One by one. Promises kept in cheap fixtures. 5 stars. No tip. I got up, went inside, and watered Dell on a Tuesday. 2 weeks later the city emailed from an address that looked like a parking ticket. "Thanks for your curb ramp inventory. A few locations have been prioritized for immediate repair." Attached was a map with polite green dots. One of them blinked at the corner where Mr. Alvarez liked to sit and heckle traffic. He texted me, "Come watch. Bring coffee. Not the burnt kind." By 9 a.m., the crew had ground down the lip that used to stop his chair cold and poured a clean slope that looked like intention. It cured to the color of oatmeal and hope. Mr. Alvarez rolled back and forth across it like a kid testing ice on the first winter day. His granddaughter wheeled up, popped a careful little wheelie, and the two of them whooped like the Bulls just won a Game 7 they had no business winning. "A good corner," he said, patting the rail, "is a promise kept." I stood there with 2 hot coffee and eyes that stung for reasons I didn't need to name. On the walk home I typed in my notes, "You don't fix a city, you keep an eye on it while it heals in patches." That afternoon Leela texted a photo of the finished crosswalk mural. It had already been scuffed by tires. Shen added another coat anyway. The kids stood in front of it with roller handles, like staffs. Behind them the lot's chain link wore a new banner. "Slow down. We live here. Come to the block party Saturday," she wrote. "If you go still steal your plant." "Not Dell." I typed back. Hayes sensitive. Dell, for his part, had unfurled a second new leaf, a glossy fiddle of green that looked like a quiet victory. I watered on Tuesday and walked away before I tried to love it to death. At odd hours I still drove. It wasn't just money. It was the way the city told me secrets it didn't put in press releases. A woman in Scrubs Row, in silence to a south-facing studio, it had a tomato plant on the sill and a rosary on the doorknob. A father and son argued about which dinosaur would win in a fight and then split a bag of chips exactly down the middle. A teacher graded papers with a red pen that squeaked. People handed me their days and I set them down carefully at their stops, like fragile boxes with no return address. Sometimes, late, I'd park by the lake and listen to the radiator not click because it was finally warm enough not to lie about it. I'd read the message thread with Nora the way you glance at a scar to remember which way the knife went. It stopped asking for anything. It just existed. She sent the occasional photo of a project taking shape, a firm leaf that somehow hadn't crisped. I sent nothing, or I sent a single word. Good. We were learning that sun echoes don't need to be chased to be heard. Saturday's block party smelled like charcoal and cheap cologne. Kids ran wild with chalk and sugar. A DJ balanced a speaker on a milk crate and found the exact volume that made old men nod and babies nap. Leela handed me a paint pen and pointed to the sign-in board. I wrote my name and underneath, out of habit, he, him, makes lefts on reds in alleys only if safe. A teenager read it and snorted. Mina showed up pushing a battered bike with fresh bar tape. She'd cut her hair an inch shorter. Somehow it looked like a decision, not a trend. "There you are," she said, like we'd agreed on it in advance. We wound string lights under the banner until dusk made them matter. When the sun slid behind the bungalows, Mr. Alvarez rolled up to the new curb with a plate of chicken and declared it within my purview. He took a bite, chewed like a man signing legislation, and nodded at me. "You did that," he said, chin toward the slope. "You did that," I corrected. "Fine," he said. "We did that." He pointed a chicken bone at the block. "That's how any of this happens." Night clamped down and the lights came up and the mural already looked like it had always been here. Mina leaned her shoulder against mine, companionable as a coat on a cold bench. We didn't name it anything. We didn't need to. A kid traced the yellow rectangles with his scooter wheels and announced each turn like a sports commentator. Somewhere down the street someone yelled in delight. Somewhere else a dog barked. Airplanes stitched the dark with quiet thread. On Sunday I didn't drive. I fixed a squeak on Mina's bike and she pretended not to see my hands shake at first. We ate palettas on the stew and watched a thunderstorm miss us by 6 blocks. After, the world smelled rinsed. "You want to see a secret?" she asked. We walked to the alley behind her building where a neighbor had coaxed hollyhocks out of cracks. "You'd swear were to mean to bloom. People underestimate alleys," she said. "Des stuff happens when nobody's staring." Monday morning the nonprofit called. They'd landed a small grant for a pilot on the west side. Map desire lines where people crossed mid-block because the crosswalks were a dare, not an invitation. "Part-time coordinator," Leela said. "Someone who can hold a clipboard without making it the weapon." I said yes before fear could turn the word into a committee. I bought a new tape measure because I've learned a person should have tools that belong to the life they are living now, not ones borrowed from the person they used to be. On my first day back, the office smelled like dry erase and ambition. The budget was a joke we took seriously. We printed maps on recycled paper and taped them together at the edges because the city never quite fits a single sheet. Volunteers trickled in. A bus driver on split shift, a retiree who'd once unionized a bakery, a kid with a skateboard, and an eye for where cars pretend not to see you. Around lunch, my phone buzzed. Nora. A photo of a sign on a studio door, her name stenciled clean, a tiny fern emoji sharpied next to it like a private grin. "Klein to prove the rebrand," she wrote. "I didn't kill the plant, yet." I stared at the picture the way you look at an old house that's been repainted but wears the same bones. I typed, "Proud of you." Deleted it. Typed, "Look at you." Deleted that too. Finally I sent a thumbs up, the blandest blessing, and put the phone face down. At 3 we rolled maps into tubes and walked out to meet the street where it was. Mr. Alvarez met us halfway through the first block, cane clicking, granddaughter coasting beside him, in a chair she handled like a violin. Mina balanced a clipboard on her palm. The teenager with chip polish measured with her skateboard. We set cones where the footpaths cut through desire like water. Drivers slowed, a few honked, some waved. A woman with a grocery cart detoured and said, "Thank you," in that way that still knocks me back 2 inches. We didn't fix everything. We didn't fix much. We put marks on paper that said, "Here, start here." Sometimes starting is the only honest thing on offer. That night I took one last airport run out of habit. The man in seat 2 was asleep before the wheels left the runway. The woman in seat 3 cried quietly into a sleeve. The kid in seat 4 colored a picture of a rocket with a door big enough for 3 people and a dog. When they came through the sliding doors, I loaded luggage and listened to the stories they didn't know they were telling. On the way back, the light at Cicero and 55th fell green because I'd caught the first one right. It felt like a tip from the city for showing up. I parked by the harbor on the way home. The water held the skyline like an answer you can live with. I opened my notebook and wrote, "Maybe closure isn't a door or a window. Maybe it's a porch light you change and the bulb burns out, even if nobody's coming." It read corny and true. I let it be both. Back at the apartment, the hallway smelled like someone's toast and someone else's paint. Jill's newest leaf had unfurled fully while I was gone, glossy as truth. I watered on Tuesday because it was Tuesday, not because I was sad. Before bed, I scrolled to the photo from Nora of the little sign over her desk, the one with my sentence lettered better than I could ever write it. I smiled, not the kind that asks for a reply, just the kind that settles your face where it belongs. I set my alarm. The radiator didn't knock. In the dark, the city hummed that low, forgiving hum it does when you've done enough for one day. I thought about the block party lights, the curb that finally sloped like kindness, the hollyhocks in the alley that no one planted on purpose and everyone claimed anyway. I didn't need a grand epiphany. I had a plant not dying, a block with its banner, a neighbor with a drill to borrow, a job that paid in, small promises kept. I had a number in my phone. I didn't have to call to know she was okay. I had a city that would still be here in the morning, needing and giving in equal, unglamorous parts. 5 stars, I thought, not asking for a tip. I turned off the lamp and left the little light above my own door on, not for her, not even for anyone else, really. For the version of me still finding his way upstairs in the dark. For the small fact of home.